Warning, you are about to hear truths and facts about the escalating crime of sextortion facing our teen boys in the United States today. So get ready for a dose of much needed reality. Buckle up, is what I like to say. Who better to discuss this than our great warrior friend, Irv Brandt? Irv is a veteran of the US Navy, served on the Atlanta Police Department as a patrol officer, along with working undercover vice and narcotic operations. Irv was a member of the US Marshals Service for more than 20 years and spent most of his career working international cases. The US Marshals conduct all international extraditions for local to federal agencies. Irv used to charter, I think this is very interesting, jets and bring home cartel members. We're talking a lot lately about cartels here in the United States. A lot of cartel members, a dozen at a time. Irv says the most important and satisfying arrests were sex offenders because they will keep offending and leave a wake of misery if they are not caught. And I couldn't agree more with that. Irv is a well-known author. His series of books surround the tales of Chief Inspector Jack Solo with the US Marshals Service. His most current is Forever Solo, Night of the Dragon, a combination of mystery, thriller, and adventure. Solo Journey, Buddha Nights. Now, Irv brought this to our attention the last time he was on, is full of international intrigue, plus a young woman gone missing who has been lured into a human trafficking ring in Southeast Asia run by the Russian mob. You can follow Irv on Twitter at Jack Solo Author. We'll have all of his information in the body of this video about where you can purchase his books. And I want to welcome Irv Brandt back to the Warriors.
Thank you, Lynn. It's a pleasure to be working with you again.
Well, Irv, you know, I love to share your voice. You have so much knowledge. I'm going to start with one thing, though. You ready, Irv?
I'm ready.
What about the astronauts? I'm sorry. I just had to say that. Did they come back yet? I've been in meetings back to back the last 2 hours. Are they here yet?
I saw SpaceX Dragon was at ISS, and I saw my friend Sonny Williams hugging some of the members of the crew from SpaceX. I don't know if they're back on Earth yet. If they're not, it'll be soon.
Okay, I got to follow up after this. I'm so excited they're finally coming home. Time, these poor people, right? That's for another program, though. Irv, I want to start with something I touched briefly on because after you were on last time, people actually asked me. They don't understand what a federal marshal does. Would you please describe a little more in detail the job of a federal marshal?
You know, most people don't, and I understand the U.S. Marshals Service isn't a large agency, comparatively speaking to the FBI or the DEA. There's only a couple of thousand deputy U.S. Marshals for the entire country. But the Marshal Service is divided, it follows the judicial districts, 97 judicial districts. There's one U.S. Marshal for each judicial district. Then there's a chief deputy marshal. Then you have the deputies that work the offices. And the U.S. Marshals Service main focus is to run the federal courts. They produce the prisoners and they make sure that trials go on, that subpoenas are served, witnesses show up. And I like to tell people, if you thought of a sheriff's department in a state, what they do to keep the state court system running, imagine that on a national level. Take that and look at it as a national level. So, and within the Marshal Service, you have divisions like you would any law enforcement agency. And I worked in investigative operations division. And that's where I worked international investigations, and I was attached to Interpol and the Office of International Affairs at Main Justice. So it's complex, at a glance, but once you break it down, people, when you use the sheriff department analogy, people understand it fairly more easily.
Okay, good, because we want everybody to understand what that is. I actually had a lot of people ask me, can you explain Lynn more? I said, no, when Irv is back on, I'm going to let him explain exactly what it is. We have to talk, Irv, about sextortion. The largest growing demo for human trafficking right now in the United States, I like to call it slavery. It's a much more descriptive word, the enslavement of people. But the demo, Irv, can you believe this? boys and young men, and nobody is really talking about it. Yes, the numbers are higher for girls and young women, women in general, but now we've got this real escalation of boys and young men. And I'm told it is fueled by this fairly new, not that new, but fairly new to the public, the word sextortion. So, as a male, as a man, I wanted to bring you on to share your voice and expertise, obviously. But let's really start talking about this because I find this so shocking that more people are not talking about it. And, this sextortion with our teen boys is kind of clouded in mystery. And everybody's embarrassed. They don't want to go there. They think if they talk about it, parents and, caregivers, the kids are going to look for it. They don't know. So let's start very basic. Irv, what is your understanding of what sextortion is?
Well, Lynn, I didn't know much about it until I, started following you and listened to you explain it to me. And it, like you said, it's relatively new. And as I see it, they're taking an advantage of young people, and in this case, males, which is a little unusual because it's usually the females that the predators hunt on. But they're taking advantage of these young people and getting compromising photos of them, and they're using it for financial gain. And it's having devastating effects on these children. And that's what they are. Even if they, a lot of people see pictures of teenage boys and they don't consider them children, but they are children. And I couldn't believe it when I first started to hear about the cases. And you're right, it's escalating. And the reason it's escalating is because there's money in it. Lynn, we both know that the answer to all our questions is money. That's what it is.
Money, or money. So let's give a scenario. So the scenario for the warriors listening could be a teenage boy, 12, 13, 14, 15. Kids are very vulnerable. Everybody is these days, living lives online. We know kids are spending an average of ages 9 to 17, 5 to 7 hours at a minimum online. Okay. We also know 9 to 17, they have access to 4 devices, phones, Chromebooks, laptops, gaming. That's a lot of everything. They're living online for the most part. They're isolating themselves online. And we also know everybody seems to be giving away their personal information, right? So number one rule is you don't do that, but still people are doing it. And so an example would be a boy thinks it's a cute teenage girl, his peer, and they start exchanging, text, dialogue, whatever they're doing. And literally, because we have studies within 24 hours, this boy may think this is a girl, a peer, and she knows where he lives, his parents' name, his dog, his sister. He doesn't like his school, everything, his friends' names. And then they just very easily exchange these inappropriate images, which are nude images, right? Sexual dialogue, nude images. The kids are all doing it. So we're not judging right now. Everybody hold that thought for a second. They've just grown up in this kind of digital bubble. They do this. So let's deal with that first. And once that image is sent, for instance, the example, the boy sends the image, usually the other person will send it first. Here's a topless photo or something like that. And come on, send me yours. Show me yours, that kind of thing. And the boy will do it, or vice versa. And with that, the next message will be, okay, now send me $500. So that's sort of just an example. And then it becomes terrifying. Now, here's the part, Irv. Well, we have to let everybody know. With these scenarios, which are escalating, there can be no embarrassment. We have to talk about sextortion. We have to talk to the kids about sextortion. We have to talk to parents and caregivers. We have to talk about it, and then they have to know what to do because these are crimes. This is not something you don't delete photos. You don't erase it. You don't yell at your child. All of that I know is hard, right? Because you want to run away from all this stuff. We must talk about it because we have such a rash of teen boys in particular committing suicide. They'd rather do away with themselves than talk to their parents because of the embarrassment. So, what can you say about that, Irv? Um, how should we be going about it? How can we get them to understand that this is a crime? Anything against a minor is a crime, because I'm really trying to get at the parents. It's tough. I mean, they don't want to hear about it because it's dark and ugly. Yet the FBI has put out 3 different warnings in the last year, and I see very little media coverage on the whole thing. So what do you have to say about that?
Well, Lynn, it's exactly what you said. I mean, this is a generational thing. This is a generational gap. And I understand how parents don't have the same view as their children, that they grew, when we grew up, there was no internet. We didn't grow up online. These kids are born into a digital
Mhm.
age, and they spend, like you said, their entire lives
Yeah.
online. And so when you take that away from them, when you crush that, as an adult, we'd say, well, we'll just turn the device off. I just won't go online and I won't look at it. That's not how they view the world. Their whole life is online. So when you crush that, that means you crush their entire lives and they don't want to go on. They would
Right.
rather die than do that. And that's the first thing that parents have to understand about these children, is that their children are different than them. They don't, you can't force them to live in your world. They have to live in their world. And your job as a parent is to keep them as safe as you possibly can in their world. You can't pull, I know I want to do it. I want to pull them out of that world and say, no, live in my world. It's safer in my world. But they can't live in my world. This is the world they were born into. This is the world that they're going to live in. So it's up to us to explain to them how dangerous their world is. And we got to convince them what you said about these photos and things like that, that you would think is harmless. But us as adults, Lynn, you know it, I know it, that a nude photo of a child, someone under the age of 18, male or female, is child pornography.
Mhm.
That's a felony. To send it or receive it is a felony. So that's the first thing that we have to emphasize on them, is that I understand you're a victim. I get that. But you were committing a crime. You were actually committing a felony in what you were doing. And that's how you were extorted in the first place. It's not just, the main thing for them is the embarrassment. And I get that. It's, the humiliation, of what their parents will think, of what their friends will think, of what society, in general will think of them. But one of the other things is what they're engaging in is actually a crime. And so we have to emphasize that. And and this is for the parents, not the kids, because I'm not blaming victims, and I'm not going to shame a victim.
Mhm.
If I'm going to place blame on anyone, I'll place blame on the parents for not doing enough to protect their children. And I don't even want to do that. But if I'm forced to, that's where I'm going to put the majority of the blame. So they have to be educated first
Mhm.
so they can educate their children. That, I mean,
That's it.
it's the same way with all problems. If you're talking about drugs, it's the same thing. The parents have to educate the children on the dangers of drug use. It's as simple as that. I can't do it. You can't do it. They're not going to listen to us. You know, they live in a different world
Well,
than we do.
now wait a minute, Irv. I have a couple of things to share.
Okay.
So I just did a workshop, sixth, seventh, and eighth grade, 8 classes, 30 minutes each. And so they're 12, 13, 14 are the ages. And the night before, and I work with the DEA, I'll admit it, because all of this online predation, isolation, drug buying, it's all happening online. So we work together and we go in, my partner Joanna, and the night before we do a webinar, Irv. The parents knew from the guidance counselor, the teachers, what this would be about, right? Then we do the webinar just to talk. They can be anonymous, the parents, they can ask questions. We want to prepare them, put them at ease. Of 300 students, I have two things to tell you. How many parents do you think came on the webinar?
I wouldn't even hazard
Just take a guess. Just take a guess. It's
I would say 50%.
300 parents. Now, at the time, because the kids had to have permission slips to participate in the classrooms, right? So I didn't know of the 300 how many would actually participate, right? Until the day I was there. But the night before, 25 parents showed up for the webinar. Now, I'm not shaming. I'm kind of judging though now, Irv. It's my new thing because in this world we live in, wherever the kids are, so are the predators. They have to start stepping up because most of these parents and caregivers have bought the phones, they buy the devices, they buy the games, they pay for the internet. You have to start showing responsibility and put some guardrails. And if the guardrails are open and honest communication with your kids, you got to start somewhere. So we had 25. Now the next day, 300 students. How many students do you think participated in our workshop out of 300? Just take a guess. There's no, you're not,
75%.
Okay, well, you're closer this time. Well, we had 200 out of the 300. Okay, so 100 of the parents opted out. They would not let their kids. I'm not talking about like sextortion. What I'm talking with you as an adult, it's very basic about online safety and very immersive when I teach things and with the kids, tell me what's happening, what games you're playing, And I keep seeing this boy in the 7th grade walk out of the classroom because they couldn't stay if they weren't, didn't have their permission slip. And he said, I really want to stay and hear about this and learn. My mom wouldn't allow it. And that hurts me. Because this is a kid in earnest. He wasn't fooling around or anything. He wanted to listen. And so that makes me sad, that the parents, right, don't want the kids to get the information. And again, my survey back that I get is they think it'll open the can of worms, which it does not. Because, listen, Irv, after all, we just had the Oscar movie. The best movie was a total piece of propaganda called Honora about a stripper here in New York. That was the best movie that nobody ever saw. I digress with that a little bit. But I'm saying, so the kids are seeing and hearing things anyway. So we might as be, be the ones, we might as well be the ones that teach them and talk to them about it. So I can't go, even with, I didn't grow up with the internet. You didn't grow up with the internet, but we got to get with it. We've got to save lives. We've got to educate. So they've got to start waking up, these parents. So yes, it might come off a little judgy lately, what I'm talking about, but I'm seeing too much devastation. I'm seeing a lot of things going in the wrong direction, right? So we got to wake up these parents. So that's a hole that I want to plug as well, that they have to start stepping up and just learn more, be open to discussion. That's it. Open to discussion about this. The good news is, or if I want to share about this group of kids, 6th, 7th, 8th grade, very smart. Smarter than the high school kids, believe it or not. We used to start in high school. It's too late though now. You have to start younger and younger, right?
Correct.
I'd like to start in 1st grade if somebody would allow me, age appropriate with just certain information. But 6th, 7th, and 8th, pretty good. These kids were smart. They're like, we block people. We don't answer DMs, because predators are always slipping in those direct messages. I was very impressed. And for me, that's good news. Like that this age group, they're savvier, they're smarter, but we can't hide anything from them. They're seeing it anyway. I can't even tell you what I see on the streets in New York here, Irv. We'd be here all day. Really, all kinds of things going on here. Now, let me ask you about, did you study up at all or read about right now, one of the main businesses in Nigeria, actually, is they have huge warehouses of these, they actually human traffic people to do this, to sit at these tables with computers and just do sextortion all day to American kids. Do you know anything, what can you share about this? Because this really blows my mind, this whole thing.
Lynn, it's like when we first started talking about this, and I said, that the answer to all the questions is money. And I did, when you asked me to join you to talk about this, I did read up on some articles and things like that. And a lot of them were based out of Nigeria.
Yeah.
And they're developing a culture in Nigeria on these scammers, just like you said. Some are voluntary because they want money, and some are being forced to do this. And I got to tell you, it's not an exact parallel, but when I was the country attaché in Jamaica and I was in Kingston, I had a group of detectives, vetted detectives with the JCF that worked just for me. And we investigated a lot of crime in Jamaica, looked for a lot of fugitives. But the biggest thing in Jamaica was lottery scams. And our biggest arrest and our biggest extraditions were taking out these ringleaders of these lottery scammers. And the reason why I bring this up in parallel to the Jamaicans is because it's the same thing. It becomes a cultural thing. I used to make a joke in Jamaica that they taught it in high school, how to scam old people in the United States out of their life savings. And it's true. The people down there, they get influenced by these groups that have a lot of money, and they have flashy cars, and they live in houses and things like that, and they entice them in and they indoctrinate them. They're telling them, like, look, there's nothing wrong with this. These are rich Americans. They can afford this money.
Yeah.
You're not hurting anybody. You can make a lot of money working for us. And it's hard to make them understand, no, you are devastating lives. This isn't okay. You got to break this cultural thing. And the same thing is going on in Nigeria, and it has been for a long time. Don't get me wrong. West Africa in general, with financial scams, ever since the internet. We all know the stories of the Nigerian prince that sends you an email.
I still get them, Irv.
Yes, yes. And Lynn, do you know why? Do you know why you get them? Because they work. I mean, they may have to send out a million of them.
I don't understand that part, Irv, because
Well,
that Nigerian prince has been around a long time, and people are still sending.
How can you convince someone, when you're on the phone, that when you didn't buy a lottery ticket, that you won the lottery, and the person you're speaking to has a Jamaican accent? But I mean, they do it because it works.
Because it works. And you know what? The other I age myself, I guess, but I don't really care. But I just got it yesterday, Irv, my little AARP newspaper I get in the mailbox. And I kept it. I went through it this morning. It's 2-minute read, the whole thing. It's all about scams.
Yes.
Where they take the 3 seconds or 2 seconds, this article said, of the voice, and they can record it, and then that voice is calling grandma up to say, I'm stuck in a jail in, I don't know, Dominican Republic, and can you send $5,000? Or
yes.
These scams with AI, the artificial intelligence, are ramping up out of control, according to AARP and other sources we have. So we have to do a better job in educating, I guess, Irv. You think people?
It's hard to keep up, Lynn. It's hard to keep up.
Because the predators are always 10 steps ahead. That's why.
It's true. With the advances in technology, with all the good things that come with it, bad things come with it, because criminals get more sophisticated and more savvy. And with the good things of technology, and there's a lot of them.
Yeah, there's
I
a lot
can't
of great
believe, as a writer, in my early days, my research, of spending times in old libraries and looking for books and things like that. And now you have it at your fingertips. I don't have to leave my chair, and I have it instantly. It's amazing, how technology has changed our lives. But as we're discussing right now, there's some stuff that comes with that. There's a price, and sometimes it's a heavy price. Sometimes it costs a child their life. Sometimes it costs a retiree their entire, life savings. And we have to get out there. We got to get in front of it, and we got to warn these people that this is going on. And that's why I particularly admire you and your organization,
Oh, thank you, Irv.
because you're going to protect the children. We adults, shame on us if we get scammed. Okay. I still feel for you, but we're adults, we're worldly, we've been around a long time. We should know better. But those kids haven't been on this earth long enough to know how mean people are and what they're willing to do to you. They have no idea. They can't even conceptualize it in their head unless you help them. They're going to learn hard life lessons, along the way. But if you're there, Lynn Shaw is there to help them understand and avoid it. That's where it needs to go.
That's it. Thank you for saying that, Irv. I tell kids, and it's kind of brutal, but I have to tell them, they only see you, these predators, these criminals, everything. They just see a dollar sign.
That's it.
You mean nothing to them.
Nothing.
You could kill yourself. They don't care. They're on to the next. You are a dollar sign. They just want to make money off of your back. So when I get the kids used to that, they kind of wake up a little bit. I do want to point out, though, that if there are any nude images, inappropriate dialogue, always make a report 911. You got to have a paper trail, and always do not erase that image. Cybertipline.org, our partners at National Center for Missing and Exploited Children in Alexandria, Virginia, they will take it over for you. Even if you think you're wrong about something, because people always say, I'm scared, I don't know, I may be wrong, just contact them. I'll put all that in the body of this video so people have some resources. Don't be scared about anything. Better to be safe than sorry. And also, Irv, what they're doing, these fraudsters, these monsters, I like to call them, is targeting teen boys from wealthier, what they deem are wealthier neighborhoods, because they think those kids will be the ones that will have that $500 to send. So all of these crimes go against everybody. But in this particular sextortion, they're really focused on more upscale neighborhoods, thinking the kids, again, will have more money. Now, let me ask you something. What do you want to tell? Well, I want you to be tough now. I have a lot of questions for you, but we're running out of time. But what do you think right now, Irv, to you? What do you think is the number one crime happening in the United States? There's so many, but what do you think? That's kind of a bad question, actually, because there's so many different crimes. I
don't know if you're speaking to murder rates or if you're speaking to drug dealing, but if you're
I think it's all related.
It is. It is. But when you're talking about trending crimes, things that are trending, the hottest trending things, I would say cyber crimes are the biggest, crimes that are trending in today's society now, because you can do it, like we discussed, from far, far away.
Yes.
It used to be when you wanted to take someone's money, you lived in New York City a long time. You know how it is. They would come in and either intimidate you to get your money, or physically take it away from you. And they were right there in your neighborhood. You could give the cop on the corner the description and everything else. Now you don't know where they are. You don't know where in the world they are.
Irv, you get an A+ for that, because I was going to say all of these crimes online, cyber crimes, escalating at unbelievable, at an unbelievable pace. Let me ask you something. Also, I always want to mention cartels. I talk about them nonstop, because I know from our work at the Warriors, the cartels have infiltrated, and they're working in all 50 states, and they've gotten our American kids in middle and high schools, I will keep talking about this, to deal their drugs, to traffic their peers. So when people say to me, I actually just had somebody at a school say to me, a principal, we don't need your program, Lynn, because we don't have a problem in our schools. I'm here to say there's a problem on some level in every single school across the United States, somewhere. And it ties into your cyber because it's all online, it's all hidden behind a screen. Can you weigh in anything about cartels that we should be on the lookout for? Because, that's kind of people don't know what that is. It's not visible to a regular person, any of that, but it affects everybody.
Right. Well, when we talk about and we say these names, certain connotations come immediately to mind. And when we say something like cartel, and you think of Pablo Escobar and, people, maybe the movie Scarface and, things like that. But it's evolved since then. That's kind of the past now. Cartels are basically organized crime. That's all it is. Whether you want to talk about the mafia or the Russian mob or the cartels south of the border, it's organized crime. And organized crime will get into anything that they see is profitable. Anything that they see is profitable. If it's human trafficking, they're all for it. If it's drug dealing, they're all for it. If it's money laundering, they're all for it. If it's lottery scams, they're all for it. If it's kidnappings, well, that's a little different, because you have to have actual people that are willing to go in and abduct somebody. But if the money is enough, they'll find those people. They'll find people who will do it. And in today's world, like we've been discussing with cyber crimes, you don't need tough street thugs to do this. Anyone can do it. Anyone can sit behind a computer keyboard and intimidate and humiliate someone. It doesn't take any physical attributes to do it. You can do it from a call center in Mumbai and, tell them that you're an IRS agent and that if you don't, pay your taxes to this account, they're going to issue a warrant for your arrest. Anyone can do it. Anyone can do that. And the cartels, they're not going to be left out. If there's money to be made, they're not going to be left out of it. They're going to go and they're going to get some of that money for sure.
Irv, I just thought of something. So if we know about all this West Africa, Nigeria, all these warehouses where people are working and stealing from us, and we've got all these servers and things, if I know about it, why can't we in the United States do a better job of shutting all this down? How does that work?
That's the number one question, Lynn. It's the cooperation between the countries and the cooperation between law enforcement. Just like I said, I was in Jamaica as a country attaché, and I worked with the Jamaican Constabulary Force, and I had dedicated detectives to work with, and we had common goals. And that's what you have to do. The law enforcement has to branch out, and the police agencies have to see this as a common goal, that they're going to work together. And what's fortunate, and you see it happening now, these people being extradited from Nigeria, with most African countries, we have extradition treaties with those countries. They, for the most part, are the old British treaties that we had with the United Kingdom. When they got their independence, they kept the treaties in force, and particularly Nigeria, I believe. Oh boy, college was a long time ago, Lynn. I think they got their independence in the early 60s from the British, and they kept.
Sounds about right, Irv. Sounds about right.
Okay, they kept the extradition treaty in force, and a lot of African countries have done that, and so it's easier to work with them because we already have an extradition treaty in place. The United States goes over there, works with the locals, and we fund it. We give them training, we pay for the training, we bring them to the United States to train them. We make sure they have the proper equipment, and it works really well. Now, other places, not so much. Like, let's say, for example, Asia. We only have a few extradition treaties, with Asia. Most of those countries, we do not. And the law enforcement there have enough problems on their own. They're not worried about problems that are happening in the United States. They're not concerned that people are setting up call centers and robbing people in the United States. They're only worried about their own country. And if we find someone in Vietnam, with a call center, well, we don't have an extradition treaty with Vietnam. It's very difficult for us to go in and shut those call centers down. But I can tell you, I spent years working international. The Office of International Affairs at Main Justice, their number one goal is to hammer out treaties, with countries. They want to have extradition treaties in every country in the world if they can possibly do it. And they're dedicated to working that. And as soon as we get a new treaty or an updated treaty to include more crimes, because the world has changed, and to include cyber crimes and things like that, it's up to the Attorney General to jump on that opportunity and put those federal agencies in place in those countries, to start working together. And that's how we're going to stop human trafficking. That's how we're going to stop sextortion. That's how we're going to stop these large-scale frauds, scams. I don't see any other way, Lynn.
Yeah, I agree. And I only add to that, to go out, as they say, into the weeds, as people say. My new thing also, Irv, is we have to get rid of this Section 230 of the Communications Decency Act from 1996. That basically says, I won't bore you with all the details, that the internet, that was considered the birth of the internet in 1996, that this Section 230, these platforms, Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, all of them, they act as a billboard, a newsstand. They cannot be held responsible for any, third-party content. Therefore, all of these crimes online can flourish because they have no responsibility. However, a lot of things are changing, Irv, in 2025. We just had the First Lady participate in Congress. It's never been done before, a few weeks ago, with our first piece of legislation that looks like it's getting passed, called the Take It Down Act. And that is bipartisan, because all of this work we do is bipartisan. And if these deep fakes, nude images, if the big tech company does not respond when they've been notified within 48 hours to take that image down, they can be held criminally responsible and also fined. So there's a whole kind of movement happening. And this is when I say I'm hopeful. I'm very hopeful because big tech is making so much money off of our kids illegally. Call me wacky, Irv. I thought anything with kids online real time is against the law. Any of this inappropriate stuff. So this is a really positive move. And with you on the front lines, Irv, what's up next for you? You're going to chat GPT your next book? What are you doing there?
I'm doing research as
I
we
was teasing
speak.
you. I was teasing you about that.
But I'm retired now, so just trying to support the fight as best that I can.
And you are.
With you and Nancy Grace and
Yes.
everyone who's out there doing battle, trying to keep people safe. If there's any way that, I can contribute, I want to contribute also, even though I'm an old, broke down, washed out.
No, wait a minute. The
federal
conversation
agent.
was good until you got to that part.
Right.
It was like, no, you are a warrior, Irv Brandt. I'm not kidding, because we have to, again, we have to just keep talking about these things over and over again. You never know who's listening. If it's just one person that takes away from this discussion something, and they learned, okay, cybertipline.org. Okay, sextortion. I'll talk to my son. We've done our jobs, Irv. We have to look at it like that. And it's absolutely, your voice is critical and crucial, and your career is critical and crucial. I can't be a warrior without your words. Leave us, Irv Brandt, with some final words. What would you like to say? Anything? Not that you're an old broken down. I don't want to hear any talk like that. That's not a warrior. That's not warrior words.
You're right. Those aren't warrior words. Those are defeatist words. So we won't say that anymore. What I will say is that people need to listen to you and keep up the good fight. It seems hopeless at times. It seems like, well, the problem's too large. It's too overwhelming. But you can't look at it that way.
No.
You have to go one case at a time. And for every victory means there's a defeat on the other side. And once we log up enough victories, on our side, it starts to shift and the momentum starts to shift. But it starts with one person,
Yes.
and they have to pick up the fight. Then more people will join, and then eventually you can make a difference.
Absolutely right. Our hashtag is community creates change. And just if people stay in their lane, their own little home and community, that's good enough. They don't have to be
Yes,
warriors. They don't have to be, out chasing cartels like you, Irv, were doing, all of that. Just talk to your kids. Or
yes,
you as an adult, people need to understand all these scams going on online. Just stay in your lane, and then information you see online, leverage the internet for good. From the warriors, from Irv, we'll have all of his information listed in the body of the video, how you can buy the books, his Twitter account, or I think it's called X now, X account. And if you just share that information from our platforms, that's a warrior's move. Everybody can do something. And it is just so crucial in 2025. And I'm going to say it again, Irv, I'm seeing a lot of good things, a lot of good things to report back from Washington. People are on the move. People want to make a difference. And this Section 230 is also key because, as we discussed, money. And when you hurt the wallet, that's all these big tech platforms care about. And then they start changing their ways somewhat. So once you can get in there and ruin that money flow, things that change in Irv. Irv Brandt, I want to thank you for taking the time to join us right here in the Warriors today and talking about sextortion. I know it's a tough issue. I know you're up for the job. We're going to keep talking about it because it is something I want everybody, including the kids, to understand that nobody should put you in that position, a child in that position of wanting to harm themselves because they're too embarrassed to come forward, or a stranger could just ruin their lives. Why are we allowing that? A stranger. Let us be the ones to talk about these issues and teach our kids and talk to each other about everything. So I appreciate, Irv Brandt, all you are doing. I want everybody to buy every single book Irv has written and books in the future, because that's the way to go. At Jack Solo Author on Twitter. Irv Brandt, you are such a warrior. Let us indeed speak again soon.
Anytime, Lynn. Anytime.
Thanks, Irv.